Millionaire's grief turns to shock when autistic girl knocks on his mansion door. Charles Grayson lived in a world of shadows. His sprawling mansion loomed on the hill, a solemn monument to his grief. Each echoing corridor felt like a ghost, filled with memories of laughter and love. Since the day he lost his wife in that tragic accident, the walls felt closer, the ceilings lower. Sunlight rarely broke through the heavy clouds of his sorrow. And when it did, it only reminded him of the warmth that had been snuffed out. One rainy afternoon, droplets pelted against the windows, casting patterns that mirrored the chaos in his heart. Seated in his grand, overstuffed chair, Charles stared into the fireplace. It smoldered, much like his anger. The rage directed at the man he blamed for his wife's death. He was so lost in his memories that the world outside felt like a forgotten realm. But then came a timid knock, a sound so gentle that it momentarily startled him. He hesitated before shuffling to the massive door. What was it now? Another annoying delivery? The moment he opened the door, he was taken aback. A small girl stood before him, drenched from the rain, her bright eyes gleaming with determination despite her thin frame. "Mr. Grayson?" she said, her voice shaking but steady, like a tiny branch in a storm. "I'm Lily. I need your help." His chest tightened. Why would a girl like her seek him out? Flashes of anger surged within him. Who was she to come and disturb his solitude? But intrigued, he stepped back and let her in. As she entered, her warm smile juxtaposed against the coldness of his home. "It's about my dad. He's really sick, and I heard you could help." Her voice cracked slightly, but her courage stood tall among the shadows. "Why would I help him? He took everything from me," Charles barked, the frustration spilling out before he could stop it. Lily didn't falter. "He's still my dad. Please, you have to understand." The innocence in her voice struck a chord deep inside him. Memories of his wife flooded back. Her laughter, her kindness, her unwavering belief in the good in people. I can't," Charles stuttered, grappling with the wall he had built around himself. Anger had been his only ally, but here stood a girl who reminded him of his lost love, wrapped in her own pain. "Please," she pleaded, the urgency in her tone punctuating the silence. "Without your help, I don't want to lose him too." The tension in the air shifted. As she spoke, the shadows in his heart began to stir, whispering secrets he had buried long ago. What did she know? What if she held a truth that could challenge everything he thought he knew? Charles stared at her, his heart pounding. Could this little girl possibly be the key to his redemption? Or would knowing her bring even deeper wounds to the surface? The door was open, allowing fading light to spill into his life. And for the first time in eons, he felt a flicker of hope, battling against the despair that had long engulfed him. Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions without notice. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any of the exclusive content coming. And while you're there, give me a big like to help me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. As Charles stared at Lily, her small form framed in the doorway, the echoes of her plea tangled with the ghosts of his past. A part of him yearned to help, to bridge the chasm of grief that had consumed him. But another part, that hardened soul, bristled at the idea. Why was she here? Why now? Then, just as he was about to push her away, a loud crash interrupted their moment. The sound came from the kitchen, sharp and sudden, like a thunderclap in an otherwise quiet storm. Charles jumped, heart racing, body taut with a mix of panic and adrenaline. How could this happen now? "Stay here," he barked at Lily, who looked up at him with wide eyes. Her innocence pierced through his anger, coaxing a flash of concern for her safety. He stepped away, striding toward the kitchen, dread pulling in his stomach. As he entered, the sight before him made his heart plummet. The kitchen table had collapsed, and sprawled beneath it was a figure, a man, motionless and pale. "Dad!" Lily's voice shattered the silence, raw and full. Of terror, she rushed past Charles, and everything else faded into a blur. The world narrowed to the chaos in front of him. Her father collapsed, found at the very moment she sought help. Chaos erupted inside him. Panic clawed at his throat as he rushed to his knees, taking in the man's face, a face he knew all too well. It was the man he had blamed, the one he loathed for taking away his wife. No, this can't be happening. His breath caught, and the walls felt like they were closing in again. Memories surged, the weight of loss crushing him. But now it was mixed with disbelief. How was he supposed to care now? Should he still harbor that rage? The truth spun like a whirlwind in his mind. "Lily, call for help!" he urged her, his voice strained even as shock coursed through him. He grabbed the man's shoulders, the old animosity rising anew. "You!" he spat, fury igniting inside him. But there was something else bubbling beneath the surface, an urgency to save him that he couldn't ignore. I don't know what's wrong," Lily shouted, her small hands trembling as she pulled out her phone. Just then, an unexpected movement caught Charles' eye. The man stirred, eyes fluttering open. A pained groan escaped his lips, and for a brief moment, it felt as if time froze. The man's gaze fell on Charles, recognition dawning, overlaid with confusion and fear. "Charles?" he croaked, struggling to sit up. The room felt like it shifted. A breath of new energy washed over the scene. How could he even respond to this? "Why are you here?" he hissed, anger mixing with dread. "Lily, I'm so sorry," the man whispered, his voice weak, but frantic enough to pull at something deep in Charles' heart, something he hadn't realized was there. Before he could turn his mind around it, the door swung open again, and a third figure entered. The guilt-ridden stranger who had always haunted this home like a ghost. It was the last person Charles ever expected to see again. The room was suddenly filled with questions, emotions colliding like gaps in a frayed tapestry. Each second stretched, weighed down by painful realizations. What tangled pasts pulled each of them together? "Who are you?" Lily gasped, her eyes darting between them, confusion drawing tight lines on her forehead. But it was too late. In that instant, the fragile connections shattered like glass, leaving uncertainty hanging in the air. Charles felt the walls of his carefully built world start to dissolve. Would he finally learn the truth? Or would the upheaval only deepen the wounds that had festered for so long? Charles's heart raced as he locked eyes with the man he had spent years loathing. The air sparked with confusion, anger, and a strange sense of dread. The room felt constricted, as if it were wrapping around them, suffocating. "Why are you here?" he hissed, tension tightening his throat. It wasn't just a question. It was a demand for answers, for explanations he didn't know if he wanted. The man, pale and gasping, managed to whisper, "Lily, I love you," as his gaze flitted between his daughter and Charles, a mix of remorse and desperation painting his features. Charles's chest tightened. Love? This man had destroyed love for him. "Dad, you need to rest," Lily cried, her small voice trembling over raw emotion. She grabbed her father's hand, the contact igniting a rush of urgency. Yet there was something in her father's eyes. Recognition? Hope? Suddenly the light flickered, casting eerie shadows across the kitchen. A chill ran down Charles' spine. "We need to get him help, now!" His voice was sharp, cutting through the tension. But as he moved, a sudden sickness knotted in his stomach. Just then, the kitchen door swung wide. A woman rushed in, drenched, but not from rain, her face twisted in horror. "No, not like this!" she cried. eyes darting to the man on the floor. Charles' heart sank. He recognized her. "Claire?" he gasped, feeling the walls of his mansion come crashing down. The woman he had once called a friend, now standing here, her past mingling with his. Lily looked between the two, caught in a storm of confusion. "Who is she, Dad?" Claire's gaze locked onto Charles, a mixture of sadness and fear reflected back. I didn't know." "What the hell is going on?" Charles shouted, the sound echoing through the silent kitchen, filled with echoes of betrayal. Then everything crumbled. The man groaned again, and with a surge of effort, he pulled himself up on one elbow. "Claire, I didn't want you to find out this way." His voice was strained, but filled with a desperation that sent shivers down Charles' spine. Charles stepped back, heart racing. Find out what? Without warning, the kitchen door slammed shut, shocking everyone. The oppressive silence that followed was thick, heavy. Lily's eyes darted back and forth, wide with fear and confusion. "Dad, what's happening?" In that moment, an unearthly shriek pierced the stillness. The lights flickered more violently, and a glass fell from the counter, shattering on the tiles like fragile dreams breaking apart. Time stilled as chaos erupted. The man began to convulse, his fingers twitching against Lily's grip. "No!" she cried, her hands trembling, fear taking hold. "Call for help!" Charles ordered again, but he was rooted in place, his own demons swirling, mixing with the chaos before him. Then, as if the house itself were crying out in response to the anguish, the walls shuddered. A deep bass reverberated through the air. "It's coming for us!" Claire shouted, her voice filled with unbridled panic. In that instant, the man's eyes rolled back and a truth hung in the air, thick as smoke. "I'm not the one you think I am," he gasped just before collapsing again, darkness washing over him like a tide. What did he mean? The words echoed in Charles's mind, strangling the anger, twisting it into something else. Fear, horror. The room was spiraling, and as Lily's cries broke through the haze, something deep within Charles cracked wide open. "Dad?" Lily's voice was small, fragile against the crashing turmoil around them. Charles felt the weight of 1,000 questions bearing down on him. Who was this man? What secrets had Claire hidden? And why did everything feel so impossibly tangled? Just as the walls seemed to close in tighter, a blinding light erupted, illuminating the faces in the room. And with it came a breathless whisper that sent chills down Charles's spine. "Your lives are about to change forever." What did that even mean? Time froze, and all Charles could do was stare, frozen in shock, heart pounding. What were the consequences of this moment? The mystery of this night loomed heavy, unanswered, rushing toward him like a freight train. The light pulsed around them, a tangible force that pressed against Charles's chest like an anvil. He felt a heat rising, a bizarre mix of fear and something else. Curiosity? Hope? The room, now awash in blinding illumination, seemed to hold its breath, moments stretching into infinity. Your lives are about to change forever. The statement hung in the air, drawing everyone in like moths to a flame. Charles felt himself rooted, as if the light had woven into the fabric of his very being. Lily's panicked breaths beside him reminded him of the chaos that lay just beneath this surreal moment. "Dad, what is happening?" she whispered, her tiny voice quivering. Claire's face contorted, eyes wide, reaching for the man on the floor. "Jason, please don't." But her plea hung, unreal, caught in the tremor of the moment. The man, Jason, gasped, struggling for breath, and something flickered in his gaze. The fight, or was it a lie, flickered like the dying flame in the fireplace. "Lily, you need to listen." Before he could finish, a thunderous crack split the air, followed by an indescribable shift in the atmosphere, like the last breath before a storm. The lights went out, plunging them into darkness. A heartbeat of silence ensued, broken by the frantic gasping of Lily and Claire. "Lily, stay close!" Charles shouted, his voice shattering the stillness. His heart raced, pounding in rhythm with the chaos that enveloped them. Suddenly, the kitchen door slammed open once more. A gust of cold air surged in, carrying with it an unexpected voice. "Charles!" A familiar tone rang out, one that sent icy dread coursing through his veins. He knew that voice. "Kathy?" Charles barely recognized his own whisper. She was an echo from the past, a figure he had convinced himself was buried along with his wife. The door swung wide to reveal her silhouette, drenched and wild-eyed. It felt like a nightmare coming to life. "What are you doing here?" he managed to bark, disbelief coating his words. "Enough games, Charles. You need to understand," she pleaded, stepping into the flickering light. And just like that, the reality sharpened, a blade cutting through the confusion. I don't understand anything." He felt the ground shift beneath him as his mind spun. All the pieces he thought fit, now shattered into 1,000 jagged shards. "Lily's father isn't who you think he is. None of us are." Kathy's words erupted like a volcano, raw and furious. "The truth has been hidden for too long, and it doesn't belong to just you." The room fell silent again, each face draining of color. The only sound was the muffled thumping of Jason, fighting for each breath, and Lily's whimper as she clutched her father's hand. "What do you mean?" Charles asked, desperation clawing at his throat. Kathy stepped closer, her eyes aflame with fierce emotion. "You've only ever seen the rage, the anger, but there's more to it. A history tangled in lies and secrets that twist into one another like a noose, tightening around us all." Just then, an eerie silence swallowed the space, heavy with the weight of Kathy's words. The night seemed to close in, pressing against their skin. "Remember the accident?" Kathy continued, her voice low, slicing through the tension. "It wasn't an accident, Charles. It was covered up, a truth too horrific to share." Time stilled as she unleashed that bombshell. The very air thickened, churning with disbelief and suspicion. Bodies shifted uneasily, eyes darting, searching for truth in the fractured reflections of one another. "Kathy, what are you saying?" Claire gasped, looking from Jason to her. "You can't mean." But before she could finish, the lights exploded back to life, flooding the room with sharp brightness. In the shock that followed, Jason's eyes rolled back once more, and he convulsed violently, his body seizing as chaos ripped through the kitchen. "Dad!" Lily screamed, panic twisting her small frame. The terror in her voice clawed at Charles' heart, but all he could do was stand, paralyzed, caught in a web of confusion and despair. As he struggled to process the dizzying revelations, the spinning room felt alive, resonating with urgency. Secrets long buried clawed at the walls, begging to be released. Who was Jason? What did Kathy mean by the accident not being an accident? Before he could piece together the chaos, a scream shattered the air. Lily's scream. It tore through Charles's heart, echoing the fear he had buried for so long. What were they all running from? What truth was so horrible it had to be hidden? The air thickened with questions left unanswered, and the weight of their shared histories loomed over them, dark and heavy. Would the revelations bring them closer, or tear them apart forever? In that moment, Charles felt the world shift beneath him, pulling him into an unknown abyss. And he knew nothing would ever be the same. As the chaos erupted in the kitchen, time seemed to fracture, each heartbeat echoing louder than the last. Lily's cries pierced through Charles's confusion, a raw reminder of the little girl caught in a storm she never asked to enter. He glanced back at her, saw the terror etched on her small face, and it pulled him from his shocked stupor. "Lily, stay close!" he called again, but his voice felt small against the growing tempest in the room. Kathy took a step forward, her face pale and taut with fear. "We have to save him," she urged. but her words came out as more of a plea than a command. "Save who?" Claire exclaimed, her voice cracking. "Are we trying to save a murderer? You can't be serious." "Guys, focus!" Charles shouted, heart racing. "We need to get him help, now!" Just as he bent to help Jason, a familiar sound rippled through the air, cutting through the tension, the unmistakable beep of an emergency vehicle siren. It grew louder, a juxtaposition against the chaos. Yet right as it seemed salvation was arriving, another tremor surged through the house. The lights flickered violently, and then darkness. An unnatural quiet followed, thick and suffocating. Every breath felt charged with anticipation. It was then that everything changed. A loud crash echoed from the hallway. All heads turned, eyes wide with fear. The door swung open once more, but this time the figure that emerged was not familiar, and definitely not welcome. "Stop!" a voice boomed, deep and authoritative. A man in a dark uniform strode in, holding a flashlight like a sword. His face was stern enough to pierce the turmoil hanging in the air. "What's happening here?" he demanded, locking his gaze on Charles. "Officer, you need to help," Charles urged, pointing toward Jason, who lay gasping on the floor. "He needs—" But the officer raised a hand, halting him. Not another word without explaining what's going on. The silence deepened, eyes darting between them. Kathy opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She looked ashen, as if the weight of secrets was too much to bear. "What do you know about him?" The officer pointed at Jason, his expression shifting. Fear began to weave through Charles's thoughts. The tension was palpable. Lily tugged at her father's sleeve. He's my dad." A low murmur of disbelief swept through the room. "Dad?" Claire looked horrified. "Then what in the hell is happening?" The officer stared, brow furrowed. "And who is this?" He gestured to Kathy. She stammered, but was cut off. "I never meant for any of this to happen," Jason gasped, trying to rise, his voice a frail whisper. "I swear." "Shut it!" the officer barked, stepping closer. "You're coming with me." But just as he reached for Jason, the room erupted into chaos again. A door slammed somewhere down the hall, and from the shadows stepped another figure. This time, it was a woman. She was soaked, dark hair clinging to her face. But the recognition echoed through Charles like an electric shock. It couldn't be. "Marissa?" he breathed, eyes wide in disbelief. "What are you doing here?" Her gaze darted around the room, landing on Lily. "I need to see my daughter." The room fell into stunned silence. "Your daughter?" Charles echoed, his mind racing. Everything tilted as realization sunk in, unraveling the tangled threads they had all clung to. Jason's breath hitched, eyes widening in horror. "No, it can't be." Lily's face crumpled, hurt flooding her features, confusion simmering. "But you said I was your only." The air felt thick with revelation, the kind that shatters worlds. Charles could barely process how long these lies had festered, how interconnected they had all become. "What's happening?" Lily's small voice barely rose above the silence, each word trembling with fear. The officer stepped back, assessing the spiral unfolding in front of him. Someone better explain this before things go south. And just like that, the fabric of their lives began unraveling under the weight of those three words. Your daughter. What lay ahead loomed dark and uncertain. Secrets clawing their way to the surface. The room felt smaller, the implications stretching wide. Would they find a way to untangle the truth, or would it bind them to a fate they weren't prepared to face? The silence in the room was thick, a heavy curtain drawn over the truth, wrapped in uncertainty. Charles's heart raced as he stood at the center of a storm that was far too chaotic for him to fully grasp. Kathy, Marissa, Jason, Lily, each name hung in the air, a thread in a web that was fraying before his eyes. "What do you mean?" Charles finally demanded, his voice cracking with mounting tension. "Who is she to you?" He gestured toward Marissa, desperation clawing at him. "Dad, please." Lily's small voice trembled as she looked from one parent to another, panic seeping into every word. The officer stepped forward, his brow furrowed, reading the tumult in the room. Both of you need to explain, now. Jason lay gasping, eyes darting between the churning emotions, like a groundbreaking film unraveling before its audience. I didn't want you to find out, Marissa, he croaked, pain etching deeper lines across his face. I didn't choose this. Didn't choose what? Charles shouted, impatience bubbling over. What's happening? But as if on cue, another sound tore through the stillness. A dark thud from the hallway. The officer spun around, hand reaching for his radio. What was that? Before anyone could answer, the light overhead flickered violently and suddenly went out again, plunging them back into darkness. Fear coursed through Charles's veins, heart pounding. Lily, stay close! He could barely see her, but he could feel her small presence, a beacon amidst the encroaching void. Then, the unmistakable voice echoed down. The dim hallway, a voice shadowed by familiarity, but laced with urgency. Help! Someone! Who's there? The officer called. But his voice trembled, swallowed by the thickening dark. In that moment, an arm shot through the doorway, like a lightning bolt, and a figure stumbled into the kitchen. Scott? Charles gasped in disbelief. His brother, banished from his life years ago. The man who had turned his back during the worst of it. What are you doing here? Charles's voice scraped with raw fury and confusion. I'm sorry. I didn't know it would come to this. Scott's face was ashen, eyes wild with a hint of fear that sent a chill through the room. They're coming. We need to get. Ow! Before anyone could register this new chaos, a loud crash erupted from the hallway, and the door slammed shut with an unforgiving bang. Charles's heart raced. What do you mean they're coming? I thought I could keep it hidden, Scott pleaded, trembling. But the truth, it's unraveling. They're here to claim what's theirs. His words hung in the air, cloaked in dread. Just then, the lights flickered again, casting everything into sharp relief for a brief moment before they flickered out once more. Who's coming? Marissa's voice broke, veiled in confusion and fear. Scott stepped closer, reaching for the edges of sanity in the chaos. The truth about the act. Low growl echoed from the back of the house, resonating like a storm gathering strength. It sent icy fingers crawling up Charles's spine. What's going on? Lily cried, clutching her father's arm. I don't know, Charles rasped, panic tightening around him. The walls felt like they were closing in. Then, with one final surge, the lights shot back to life. The kitchen was filled with people who shouldn't be there. Each one an echo of a past that collided into the present. Scott's expression twisted into horror as he pointed towards Jason, who now lay eerily still. You need to see what's under the table! Before anyone could react, a loud beeping blared from Jason's pocket, and inexplicably, a video began to play, projected onto the wall. The faces in the room turned to watch, jaws dropping as the unsettling video rolled forward, finally revealing a shocking truth. A scene from the night of the accident, showing everything Charles had buried deep. The dark truth that shattered lives and woven paths of revenge now laid bare for all to see. Collective gasps echoed as the small screen illuminated sins too heavy to bear, leaving them with the deepest of questions. What have we done? In that moment, everything turned upside down. Every relationship, every perception shattered and left hanging in the stillness, weighed down by darkness. The room was thick with the weight of the terrible truth. Would they be able to face the demons that had haunted them? Or would they be consumed by the lies festering in their hearts? Each face fell into a grim silence, and uncertainty loomed large as time felt suspended, teetering on the brink of revelation. The video flickered on the wall, illuminating the faces of those in the room. The scene played out, capturing a night etched in chaos, the accident that had fractured their lives. Each frame was a violent reminder of grief and guilt. Charles felt the air thicken with tension. The past was no longer shadowed. It loomed like a storm ready to break. He could barely focus on Jason, his breath hitching more with each subtle movement. Was the man truly guilty, or just another victim in this tangled web? Lily's small frame trembled against him, her eyes wide and unblinking as she watched. Her little hand squeezed his, grounding him in the whirlwind of emotions. "Stop it!" Marissa shouted at Jason, her voice cracking. "You killed him, didn't you?" The accusation reverberated through the room, charged and raw. Jason shook his head weakly, gasping for air. "I didn't mean to. You need to understand." As the video continued to play, revealing pieces of the night that had been locked away, Claire stepped forward, her expression a mix of anger and desperation. "This isn't happening," she cried out. "We can't sit here and watch this." Suddenly, the video stopped, freezing on a frame that sent a ripple of shock through them all. The last image showed a face, one Charles recognized too well. It was his late wife, her expression frozen in horror, her eyes wide as if she was screaming. "Mom," Lily whispered, the word barely escaping her lips, thick with disbelief. "Why is she there?" His question pierced through the stunned silence, his heart pounding against his ribcage. Kathy stepped forward, her eyes glistening with tears, and murmured, She knew everything." "Everything?" Charles echoed, his voice low and trembling. "What do you mean?" Before she could respond, the ground beneath them shook, the walls rattled, and the air buzzed with electricity. The emergency lights flickered back to life, casting eerie shadows across their faces. "What's going on?" Scott shouted, panic rising in his voice. Then it happened. A loud crash echoed, and the room was suddenly filled with a blinding white light. It surged from the corner, a force unlike anything they had encountered. In that moment, Jason's body began to convulse violently. "No, Jason!" Lily screamed, dropping to her knees beside him. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, the light flickered out, leaving a haunting stillness. When the darkness receded, everything was different. Jason lay still, utterly lifeless. The weight of realization came crashing down, leaving everyone breathless. "Is he?" Marissa's voice trembled, filled with terror. Lily's sobs shook the room, raw and heartbreaking. "Dad, please," she begged, but Jason didn't respond. And then, a gasp. From the corner, Claire's eyes widened in horror as she glanced at the video playing again. The screen shifted, revealing a new scene, a different angle of the accident. This time, it showed someone else, someone behind the wheel. "Was it you?" Claire's voice was a whisper, a chilling accusation pinning everyone in place. Charles' heart sank as he looked closer. The driver, the figure blurred but familiar. It was him. "No," his voice cracked, disbelief radiating through him. "That's impossible! I wasn't even there!" But the video kept playing, showing him in the car, a flash of the night. Twisting into truth, the walls felt like they were closing in, panic rising in his throat. "What? How?" Kathy stammered, her face paling. Before anyone could speak, the lights cut out again, leaving them in darkness. The air was thick with disbelief and fear, the truth clawing at the edges of their minds. Charles's chest tightened, fear mingling with the taste of betrayal. What did this mean? Was he truly responsible? Lives were unraveling. Through the gloom, your life may never be the same again. The implications of those words hung thick in the air. Would they all survive the incoming storm of revelations? Or was this just the beginning of an even darker truth? The darkness swallowed the room, a thick blanket smothering any light or comfort. In that suffocating silence, anxiety prickled Charles's skin. He felt as if the walls were inching closer, echoes of the past circling like vultures. What did Scott mean? What had he brought back with him? Then came a thud. A loud bang echoed from the hallway, jolting everyone into alertness. The tension in the air shifted abruptly. It was a sound that shouldn't have been there, something foreign in the midst of their chaos. "Did you hear that?" Marissa's voice quavered, a mix of fear and disbelief spilling forth. "Stay together," the officer commanded, his firm tone cutting through the panic. "Everyone, stay put!" But before anyone could process what was happening, the door at the end of the hallway swung open with a creak, the light spilling from the other room, sweeping over the gathering like a surge of electricity. A figure staggered into view. The breath caught in Charles's throat. It was Jason, or it had been. Now, his eyes were vacant, shock etched into his features, skin pale like paper. He stood there, mouth opening and closing, as if trying to speak, but no sound came out. "What in the world?" Claire gasped, taking a step back. Then, in the blink of an eye, everything changed. Jason crumpled to the ground, his body absorbed by darkness. But it wasn't just him. The room pulsed, shuddering as a wave of energy seemed to sweep through it. Suddenly, a piercing light erupted once more, bright enough to blind. And in that moment, the true horror unraveled. The video on the wall bloomed with clarity, revealing a different angle of the accident that shifted everything Charles thought he knew. The screen paired audio with visuals, a frantic, panicked voice calling for help. "Get off the Rhine! Watch out!" Then a strange voice rang through, an agonizing scream that tore through the fabric of reality. "Stop it! Turn it off!" Lily cried, her small hands covering her ears, shaking uncontrollably. Charles stumbled backward, confusion morphing into a churning nausea. "What is this?" he yelled, feeling the panic rising within him. It can't be." Jason's weak voice broke through the chaos, struggling against the shadows gripping him. "I didn't want you to see." But what they saw next shattered everything. The camera, his camera, it had caught him, not just witnessing the moment, but actively involved in it. A flash of headlights, the danger, the impact. "Charles, you were driving," Kathy breathed, disbelief coating her words. The room erupted in chaos. Claire clutched at her hair, backing away in shock. "No, not possible. Stop it, you're lying," Charles shouted at Kathy, though his voice trembled. The weight of truth bore down on him, suffocating. Lily's innocent cries cut through the frenzy. "Dad, what's happening? Why are you doing this?" "Lily, I choked, grasping for words, but they slipped away, heavy like lead. Then the lights swirled again, beetling along the edges of their reality, and suddenly Jason was on his feet, looking more alive than ever, his expression twisted with urgency. "You need to listen. It wasn't me. It was someone else." The revelation hung in the air, dense and electric. Charles's heart raced. "What do you mean?" "I can't explain now." Jason was cut off by another violent flash, a table shaking under a sudden force. A figure emerged from the depths of the shadows, another ghost from the past. "You need to know the truth, Charles," it said, voice deep and familiar. Charles's stomach dropped. "No. Victoria," Claire whispered in disbelief, the name barely a breath. More than just memories. More than a ghost. Victoria, his wife's twin sister, who had vanished years ago, now stood before them, her eyes filled with a haunting pain. Heart racing, confusion spilling into fear. Charles faced the storm of emotions swirling around. "Why are you here? What do you know?" "I'm the one who really drove that night," she confessed, voice trembling. "And I've been hiding ever since. From all of you." Everything splintered in that moment. Lies, betrayal, and a truth darker than any of them could handle. Would they claw their way out of this twisted fate, or was it too late to escape the shadows that had claimed them all? The air became charged as Victoria stepped into the room, shaking the very core of their reality. "I'm the one who left that night, and I was in the car." Her words echoed, resonating through each heart like a drumbeat. "It was my hand on the wheel, all of it. It was my fault." A choke of disbelief escaped Charles. "Ludge? No, you can't be serious." He shook his head as if that would dispel her words. Confusion churned in him, threatening to explode. But the look in Victoria's eyes, that raw torment, begged for understanding. I thought I could protect everyone. I thought if I disappeared that it would shield you, all of you. Lily quivered beside him, her breath coming in short bursts, the weight of secrets crashing down. Charles felt the heat rising, a mix of rage and sorrow boiling inside him. You chose to vanish? You left us. You let us suffer. Charles, Victoria's voice broke, reaching out with trembling hands. I thought you'd be better off. I was afraid to face the consequences. I thought it would protect you. Family. But the room erupted again with questions. How could you do this? Marissa cried, stepping back as if recoiling from a venomous snake. You ruined everything. Then Jason, still vulnerable on the floor, gasped as the truth sunk in. This isn't just our past. It's all of ours. You were never meant to take the blame. I never wanted this. His voice was a thread, barely hanging on. What happened really? Claire pressed, her eyes darting between Victoria and Jason. You have to tell us everything now. But just then, a loud crash resounded from behind them. A window shattered, sending shards of glass flying across the room. The officer turned, face taut with urgency and fear. Everyone, get back, he shouted, drawing his weapon, eyes searching the perimeter, but it was too late. A figure lunged through the broken window, bloodied and wild-eyed. It was a man clad in black, his face hidden behind a mask of rage. You've been hiding the truth, he bellowed, the sound piercing their hearts. And now it ends. Panic erupted, Lily shrieked, and everything morphed into chaos. Get down, Charles roared, pulling her close just as the man advanced, relentless and furious. Victoria's eyes widened. He's coming for revenge. He knows everything. The sound of shuffling feet echoed, and without warning, more masked figures poured in, filling the kitchen. Shadows danced as they circled the room, faces obscured, weapons glinting ominously in the dim light. What do you want? Jason croaked, disbelief painted across his features. The truth ends here, one of them shouted, an authoritative edge slicing through the chaos. You all need to pay. Time seemed to freeze, fear wrapping around each throat. Charles grabbed Lily, pushing her behind him while adrenaline surged. We have to get out. His mind raced. But just as he turned, the officer yelled, Everyone, stay behind me. Just then, the lights flickered, and he lunged toward the intruders, gun drawn. Suddenly, a deafening bang exploded in the room, sending Charles sprawling backward, his heart threatening to explode in his chest. The scene erupted into screams, shouts, mixing with panicked breaths. Lily, he cried, scrambling to find her. When the lights flickered back to life, the chaos quieted. The masked assailant lay on the ground, his weapon fallen, blood pooling beneath him. No, Victoria gasped, horror gripping her. But as they approached the crumpled figure, a gasp escaped them. The man was Jason's brother, sobbing heavily. You all need to know the truth. The danger isn't over. Shock washed over them like a wave, reality crashing around them. Relationships wilted, the scene shaking their core, and everything began to shift. What truth? Charles stammered, his voice a whisper, dread settling in. And as the walls whispered their secrets, he realized everything they believed in was about to unravel completely. Was this the beginning of the end, or an unforeseen pathway to salvation? The silence that followed the chaos was almost deafening. Charles felt like he had been stuck in a nightmare, and with Jason's brother lying on the floor, he realized they were not just fighting one another. They were fighting the ghosts of their past. What do you mean we need to pay? Jason croaked, still gasping for breath and desperately clutching at his brother's arm. The sudden revelation hung in the air, thick with tension. No, you don't understand, Victoria cried out. You have to listen to me. But before she could finish, the officer stepped forward, clearly under pressure. Enough. Tell me your truth, now, before this gets worse. The masked man stirred, but Jason's brother tightened his grip on the floor. You don't know who we are. The danger that follows, it's deeper than you think. His voice trembled, but there was urgency behind it, and it shook them all. The air crackled with unease, and as they all tried to make sense of the storm swirling around them, the room felt even smaller. They were trapped in this cycle of pain and truth, with nowhere to run. "I didn't mean for any of this to come out," Tayson's brother cried, tears wetting his cheeks. "But if we don't face it, it will swallow us whole. We have to fight together." "Together?" Marissa scoffed, the disbelief evident in her tone. "For what? To reconcile with the lies?" "No, to survive," Jason interjected, voice raw with pain. Lily clutched Charles's hand tighter, fear radiating off her as she looked up at him. "Dad, what's going to happen?" With a lump in his throat, he knelt down, meeting her wide eyes. "We will find a way, my love. I promise." Suddenly, the lights flickered back on with a sharp buzz. They all froze, staring wide-eyed at Jason's brother as he gasped, "They're coming for you all." Laughter echoed from another room, and a chill ran down Charles's spine. "What? Who's coming?" he yelled, desperation creeping into his voice. Then the door burst. Open again. Another masked figure entered, brandishing a weapon. "This is where the truth ends," he shouted, eyes wild with intensity. "Duck!" the officer roared, lunging forward. Chaos erupted again, bodies moving in instinct as they scattered. But just then, Victoria stepped in front of her brother, shielding him. "No, you can't hurt him! Get down!" Charles yelled, pulling Lily behind him as the weapon went off. A deafening noise, echoing in the chaos. The masked figure dropped. And for a frozen moment, everyone stared, hearts pounding. Jason's brother lay still, breath escaping him, the reality of their fight crashing down. "Why?" Marissa whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Why did this have to happen?" As Victoria knelt next to him, cradling her brother's head, a flicker of hope seeped into the dark. "We can end this together, all of us," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Charles felt the stirring of something inside, a will to fight, not just for survival, but for redemption. "Together, then," he said, lifting Lily up and holding her close. "We'll face this, I swear." As they stood together, surrounded by the remnants of their shattered lives, a new light began to pierce through the darkness. The fight wouldn't be easy, and the truth would leave scars, but they were ready to face it. The whispers of hope fused with uncertainty, intertwining as they stepped forward, united. "Whatever happens, we will." "Do it together," Charles said firmly, looking at each of them in turn. And as they moved forward into the unknown, it was clear their lives would never be the same again. But that didn't mean they couldn't fight as one. This is where the story ends. Or does it? You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Hit that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to know this ending. Don't wait another second to share. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel with these actions.